Ambassador Ron Prosser, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
We're happy to have you. Israel's leaders began this military campaign in Gaza by saying the objective was to stop those Hamas rockets landing on Israeli soil. Has that objective changed?
No, that objective has not changed, and that's what we are trying to do, and create a security arrangement this time that is going to be both durable and sustainable for us not to go back to what we had 3 years ago.
So when a colleague of yours, a close colleague, she's the ambassador at the UN, when she said that the campaign, the military assault, will continue for, quote, as long as it takes to dismantle Hamas completely, she was plain wrong, was she?
No, she wanted to emphasize the fact that we will continue dismantling the infrastructure of Hamas that are trying to do everything they can to derail any chances of reaching peace agreements in the region.
So I come back to the opening question. Your real objective then is to dismantle and destroy Hamas?
The real objective is to dismantle and weaken Hamas and deter Hamas to a point where Hamas will know that there is a price tag to shooting missiles at Israeli civilians for the previous 3 years after Israel evacuated completely the Gaza Strip and allowed them the possibility to really build something constructive in Gaza. And they've turned it into a launching pad. In comparison to that, if you look at the West Bank, in the last 2 years, the economic situation drastically opposed to the economic situation in the world has shocked dramatically because people invest in human infrastructure and positive infrastructure.
But Ambassador, you leave me confused on this fundamentally important point about objectives. I asked you whether it was deterrent or destruction of Hamas. You used both words. Which is it, deterrent or destruction?
Well, it's very clear. You can't deter without really going for the infrastructure of Hamas.
With respect, we've already got Hamas officials who are saying they are ready to talk about a ceasefire. They are ready to talk about a package of measures which would include a ceasefire on their part, Israel opening the borders to allow trade into Gaza, as they promised to do so many months ago and never actually delivered. They're prepared to talk about ending the rockets without seeing Hamas destroyed. So you're saying that would be acceptable, are you?
No, I'm saying very clearly that we are not going back to square A, where Hamas had the leverage and the lever on deciding for themselves when and where they will hit Israeli civilians. We were in that story in the picture in the past. We were out of Gaza. We were in a ceasefire that they unilaterally broke. And we tried to plead with them, with the Arab world, with the Egyptians, with the Turks, to keep the ceasefire. And what they did was exactly the opposite, because what Hamas stands for, and this is really important for your viewers to understand, they don't stand for a two-state solution. They don't recognize the state of Israel. They want to annihilate the state of Israel, and they're doing everything they can with their ideology, and they are toxic both to Israel, to their own people, to the region, and to anyone who really wants to achieve peace. And yes, we want to weaken them and destroy the infrastructure that they have built in order for us to have a chance to talk to moderate Palestinians as we are doing on the West Bank.
How will you be able to define when you've weakened them enough to have achieved that objective?
That's a fair question, and that question is being dealt with seriously in Israel. I don't think there's really a fine line when you can decide that, but where I think the
people of Gaza are suffering, and we'll talk about it at length in a moment, suffering a massive humanitarian crisis. You cannot keep this up for much longer. You've got massive international pressure upon you to stop.
We are in war with Hamas. We evacuated Gaza, like I said, years ago, not to even look back at Gaza again. We wanted Hamas.
Ambassador, there's no point looking back right now. We need to look forward. And the question, minute by minute, as the crisis in Gaza deepens, is when will you see fit to stop?
We will see fit to stop when no missiles on Israel are being shot from Hamas. What do you want us to do?
Simple as that. Simple as that.
Simple as that.
And therefore, if the Hamas infrastructure has not been, to use your word, weakened to the point when they can never fire missiles again, so be it. You will stop your military action before that point.
I'll say it very plainly. Our goal is not to create a regime change. What we want, because we are realistic, what we want to do, and I know it's asking a lot, We as a government want to give our citizens the safety of being able to walk in the streets of Israel, not disputed territories, without looking up in the sky if a Grad missile or Katyusha rockets fall on them.
Well, you've said something very important, not regime change. So when Foreign Minister Tzipi Livni describes the continued rule of Hamas in Gaza as an obstacle,
absolutely,
you're prepared to live with that obstacle?
No.
Well, you just said you were.
We are prepared clearly to stop any attacks on Israel. We have not declared the regime change as Israel's policy because we are realistic. We know that Hamas is embedded in the Palestinian Authority, as in the Palestinian people, and there is accountability and responsibility, by the way, also to the Palestinian people. Don't belittle that, because the accountability and responsibility for people who decide that that is their leadership, who give a backing to a leadership which commits terrorist activities and does everything it can in order to create a situation like that, are a tragedy for both people.
Let's now talk about the cost currently being paid by the people of Gaza. Tony Blair, who represents the Quartet, described Gaza today as a hell. He said that it is absurd to deny that there is a humanitarian crisis happening right now in Gaza. He, Mr. Sarkozy, Gordon Brown, Ban Ki-moon of the UN, the Turkish leadership, the Saudi leadership, pretty much every government in the world except the United States has demanded Israel stop firing now. Are you happy as a diplomat, as the ambassador in London, to fly in the face of so much international opinion?
Look, the question is, of course, wars never look good, and wars are never popular, and wars will never, at the end of the day, create the solution. This is obvious to us. But the question here is completely different. This is not how we look. It's the question of a country and a nation standing up and saying, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, enough is enough. What Hamas managed to do is to unite the Israeli people, who, as you know, usually are not united on anything, to be very, very clear that this is something that we cannot take anymore. No government, no democratic government can stand idle when missiles fall on its population.
But missiles are falling both ways. And you use the phrase, enough is enough. Let me just quote you the words of Daniel Barenboim, the Israeli musician, brilliant musician and peace campaigner. He said, very recently, he said, is the entire population of Gaza to be held responsible for the sins of a terrorist organization? We, the Jewish people, he went on, should know and feel more acutely than other populations that the murder of innocent civilians is inhuman and unacceptable.
This is unacceptable, using that, you know, the murder of civil, because this is very, very important. Israel is going out of its way to try and target command and control centers and Hamas's infrastructure. Our intent is not like Hamas, to shoot over its civilians, to kindergartens, to schools, to create as much havoc and injury as they can to innocent people. We know, because this is inevitable, that innocents are being there are innocent casualties, but this is not our intention.
But with respect, you mentioned schools. You have
Yes.
bombed schools. We understand that significant casualties today, as you've hit another school. Just the other day, you flattened the international school in Gaza. You've bombed the university. You've bombed the parliament building.
And we also bombed the mosque. You could add to that. And why are we doing that? Because Hamas, and this is amazing, because this time the whole world can see that because of the secondary explosions. Hamas, instead of using shelters for its civilians, has used mosques, schools, universities as a place to hide Grad missiles and Katyushas.
The school that's just been hit was, according to Palestinian medical officials, being used as a shelter for people who've been told to leave their homes by the Israeli government.
But you asked me in general, I don't know about that, so I'm not able to answer. But in general, what I can tell you is that mosques were being used to stockpile weapons in midst of heavily populated areas. So they're using their own population in a cynical and deliberate way as human shields. Now, this is something that is very, very hard, and Israel is targeting Hamas's infrastructure and we're trying to do the best we can.
As a human being, do you find it easy to sit here and defend what has happened in recent days with, we now know, well over 100 women and children killed by Israeli bombs and missiles? Do you find it easy to sit there and defend it and tell me that it is justifiable?
I want to start it this way, and start it both personally, and I think talking also for many people in Israel. Any civilian human casualty is a tragedy. It's not easy for me and not anyone else. But there's an additional part to it.